welcome to the podcast again. For the people who don't know you, it might be good to introduce yourself. I've known you as our partner in the business, but what do you do today also? That might be really interesting.
Yes, so of course I'm your ex-co-founder, John, that you know. So I used to be the head of the marketing team at Dear Digital. Left Dear Digital in February 2024. Since then, for about a year now, I've been focusing on helping direct-to-consumer clients, e-commerce clients, with mostly their paid advertising strategy. So everything that is related to acquisition strategy, also retention strategy, and everything that is related to email marketing, specifically Klaviyo. That has been my main focus. Also helping teams to pull their paid advertising skills in-house. That's been the core of what I've been consulting clients on.
From going to one side, agency sides, to client sides, and now helping clients get the team in-house.
Getting rid of them. No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
indeed.
I'm just kidding. No, I think agencies are still very valuable. Marketing agencies, that is, valuable for direct-to-consumer brands. But at a certain scale, it becomes quite logical to pull that knowledge and that practical side in-house for different reasons that we can still explore. If you
I think we wanted to have this podcast for the people listening also because we not, let's say a few months ago, we had a roundtable with a few brands in Amsterdam. And that's where we actually heard that one of their biggest challenges is still, because obviously that hasn't changed too much, but it's still the rising acquisition costs. I'm super interested to hear today, like, how do you look at it? What has been your tactic to reduce this acquisition cost? How do you like work with retention tools? How has been your experience thus far, and has it changed or will it change, for example, also in 2025?
Yeah, very broad and interesting question. Question that I get asked quite a lot. I think everything that is related to paid acquisition, and then we mostly still talk about one specific platform, that is Meta. And second, there's Google, and then come all the rest: TikTok, Pinterest, Snapchat, all those. But I think there's only one king of acquisitions still in direct to consumer, and has been for more than a decade, and it's been Meta. What has changed for the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years is that it has been become impossible to actually attract clients through Meta alone. It's not impossible, but your acquisition costs will be too high. So I think it's a bit of everything. That's the formula that still works. And with a bit of everything, I mean Meta advertising still a strong lever to pull, but your organic, your brand, your web shop, your offline touch points. Is it a pop-up store? Is it billboards, let's say? All those things matter. Joining, like I'm doing today, on a podcast as a co-founder or founder of a direct consumer brand, all those things matter, and will eventually also make sure that your acquisition cost within the platforms, let's say, drop. I think there are some direct to consumer founders and teams out there, and Flanners, that you know as well, very well, John, that show how it's done. And I don't think it's that complicated. It's getting out there, showing that your brand and your product matter in all the ways that is possible. So if you ask me which levers should I pull, and my answer will always be all of them.
All of them at once.
Yeah, if it's possible, exactly. But for that reason, if you do all those things, I think there hasn't been a big issue with Meta advertising or any paid advertising per se in the last couple of years. They still matter, they still do the trick, and it's still possible to actually acquire clients. And being profitable at first purchase is a difficult one. That's for
Hmm.
sure. I think break even is a more realistic one. But in the end, it's always about playing the LTV game, making sure that you retain those customers and that they come back as often as possible. But the game has especially changed on the technical level. Everything that is related to paid advertising has become way less complicated on a technical level. You used to be able to set up lookalike audiences, 20 niche audience compared to broad audience, test those via this and that. I think today the algorithm does most of the heavy lifting. It's the creative part that does the targeting per se. If you show a mother of 40, you will potentially attract that type of audience through that ad, and that's the way it works. So it's all about three things right now. It's the creative part, the storytelling part, and testing a lot of that. It's the process. How do you handle all that production on a creative level? That's not easy at all. And then you have the third is your data, making sure that your data is set up in the correct way and that you can actually learn as much as possible from those creatives, and that you can also easily detect where the problem is. For example, in my meta setup, like my dashboard where I see all my data, I actually created a whole funnel from A to Z. So it starts with amount spent, and then how many website visitors, add to carts, CPC, etc., until the actual new customer conversion. And there you can easily detect, okay, this is what's going wrong. Where, for example, it can already start at the beginning where your CPM, your cost per thousand impressions, is too high during a specific season. That means maybe you shouldn't be advertising at that point because all your competitors are advertising as well. And it's getting way too expensive and you're losing money on that cohort that you're picking up. So it's definitely, to summarize, definitely changed. I
Yeah.
think it has become way more interesting because it's more about what you sell and how you sell it than the hacks that the gurus talk about on YouTube videos. And I think that's way more valuable for both the end consumer as the business, the brand, and the team behind it itself.
Yeah. Maybe I'm interested to hear like your process there and how you look at things. Let's say I'm a subscription brand. I do around 2 million in revenue yearly. I have like 60% of my business is actually based on subscription, and I want to hire somebody like you, and I'd like to see like, hey, I now have an acquisition cost that's just too expensive. What would
Mhm.
be the first thing you would do? And would you then say, hey, you've hired me for Meta, but you need to do everything else? Is that the first thing you'll say?
I think when we talk about subscriptions, and you send me a small email, John, to already like tackle those questions, and I was thinking about it, and I realized that it's not about the meta strategy, but it's all about the offer, especially with subscriptions. I think when people discuss that acquisition costs for subscription brands or products are getting higher, yeah, I don't believe that per se. I just think that your offer shouldn't be a subscription because the threshold is way too high for a subscription. Of course, no one is gonna knock at your door and ask to marry you. So that's exactly the same. I think a product that has a low threshold both in pricing and the offer itself should be the way to advertise on potential subscription offers that come afterwards. With that, I mean a sample pack where you offer the experience of the product. Let's say it's a food or beverage product. You send them a sample pack of different products within that bundle. If it has multiple tastes, they can experience all the different tastes. Maybe they like one, maybe they like two, and based on that, I think not even then you can start selling them subscriptions, because I believe in subscriptions when it becomes a habit. I think after one purchase you shouldn't sell people subscriptions. You went on the first date, again, you're not going to ask them to marry you. I think when it becomes a habit and that you see a certain frequency, let's say that someone is ordering for 3 months every month, then you see, okay, a subscription could be a valuable thing for that customers. And then you have two options. You could say, we're simply gonna show why a subscription is worth it, and I think pricing is a big factor in there.
Hmm.
If you lower the threshold on pricing, and if you have a subscription that you pay less per month, that's quite an obvious one. And you have extra perks, of course, that you can also add to that. But I think for me, the most important thing is there should be a reason that people start a subscription. And I've seen also people trying to aggressively sell subscriptions, and people that buy them are unaware that they bought them. And after 1 month, they say, "You took money off my credit card. What are you doing?" And that shouldn't be the thing to I try to do exactly. So what I propose is one low threshold product that you sell through meta ads, for example. And then when there's a habit, after a couple of months, you see a certain frequency, then you try to nurture them to become a subscriber. And there I see two, again, levers that you can pull. Email, the most important one, also the easiest one. Like, hey guys, we also have subscription, and for this and this reason, I think it might be valuable for you. And then on the second side, you can also create like cohorts from your CRM, from your Klaviyo, where you see that pattern, you export that CSV to Meta, and you advertise on that specific cohort where you have a similar message that you have also in Klaviyo. Um, for that, I think attribution wise, it's very important that you can actually create a custom metric that shows you when a person has become subscriber. Otherwise, you're just spending money on people that might purchase again, and then you see a purchase coming in, and you think, okay, they clicked on that ad, they purchased, but you don't know if it's a subscription or any other type of conversion. So I think it's very important to set up those custom metrics, and for that you have specific tools like Converge is a good one that I use for all my clients, and the one that I also would recommend for those kind of setups.
Is there like a certain attribution model that you'll always use just to have the right numbers, the way you look at it?
In Meta itself, you mean, or a third party one?
Yeah, like indeed, there are, as I understand it, there are several models. Is there always like the last click? Is it how do you?
In Meta, I use 7 day click. I drop the 1 day view. So in general, normally when you just start a Meta account and you don't change anything, it's 7 day click, 1 day view. And the problem that I have with 1 day view is that it overlaps so often with my Klaviyo email bursts. So that's the reason why I drop that 1 day view, because it gives you the wrong type of data. Some people in the community also talk about the 1 day click. I believe it's too short, and it's quite undervaluing the effect that Meta has. So the 7 day click is the one to use for me, combined also with a setup that is server side tracking. Again, that you have the data loss, which is figured out, and then on top of that, isolating returning customers via new customers. That's one of the most crucial ones, and one of the first steps that I usually take when I have a new client where it's not siloed enough. That I talk with a service like Converge to make sure that those are split up in the right way, and that we can actually start analyzing what comes in as new customers. Because to be honest, don't believe in retention strategies for ads if it doesn't have a specific thing. Like subscription is one thing more than you already had, but paying again for the same customer you already acquired is I think a tricky game to play.
What? Sorry, what does that mean? You don't believe in retention strategies with ads?
So yeah, you pay like, let's say, 20 euros to acquire a new customer, and let's say your average order value is 30 euros. So you're doing break even or even making a loss on that customer. Then what some advertisers do is they set up a remarketing strategy to make sure that that client comes back again and they pay again for 5, 6
Yeah.
euros for that conversion. And I think purely on a financial level, that's a tricky game to play. I always exclude all of my returning customers in 3 different ways in my setups. Aside of that, I sometimes have a returning customer campaign set up, but that's for specific things like new product launches, a story that you want to tell to your new customers as well that they might not see in email or that they might miss, which is too important to actually not see, but not your always on funnel on remarketing. That just makes sense because you're paying for that customer twice.
And so you would then get that customer by either they already have a subscription, or they would go through email marketing, or other channels.
But subscription is one of those reasons why advertising could still work. I just mean, like we talked about, making sure that they become frequent customers, that second, that third purchase. And then, if in the case of a subscription, you might actually try to convert them to a subscription. But that second purchase, that third purchase, should be done in an organic or in a way that is done by email, but not again with meta ads. That really doesn't make any sense. Again, if you're trying to push something a new, bigger subscription or a product that they might not have known before because it's a new launch, a new taste of something, that would make sense. But even then, in most cases, the media budget of returning customers will not go above 10% of the total media budget.
Yeah. Imagine, let's go back to that example. I think you first said, if I were to start with a new client and it's a subscription brand, I would take a look at their tracking setup, making sure that we at least have the right data. Is then the next step going to Excel or whatever tool you would use there and see the unit economics? And do you decide, like, I want to go break even, I want to make loss on the first order? I don't want to, but will need to make a loss, for example.
Yeah, so first step indeed would be to look at the offer first before looking at the actual data. Does the offer make sense? And then combined with that, also look at the data. Does the data make sense? When do we break even? When do we become profitable? So that's the journey that you should take. I think that's when you should become break even or profitable is also a cash flow question, of course. In some cases, it should be 3 months. In some cases, it can be a whole year that you wait for to become break even. I think if it's more than a year, in most cases, it becomes quite difficult because you of course have churn as well of those customers. So that becomes a tricky one in general. But so yeah, first thing would be check what is the offer. Does the offer make sense? And can we actually, is this the best offer that we have to sell to new customers? Does simply purely gut feeling, does that customer journey make sense? That's my first thing. The second thing would be to look at the data, both in platform as the all the data combined also with the business figures that come in. Um, and then third step would be, okay, how can we optimize based on the offer that we have and the finances that go behind it? How can we optimize the funnel to get the most out of that journey? And it begins with paying as less possible for your first time acquisition, and then making sure that they come back as often as possible to that second, third purchase, and then from that third purchase, let's say in some cases might be 4 or 5, in some cases it might be 2. Um, how can we convert them to an actual subscriber? What are, and then I think asking your, if you already have subscribers, asking your current subscribers, why the hell did you become a subscriber, is a good way to start, because that's some very valuable information that is there. If it's price that is a factor, I think sending out a survey to your current subscribers and asking them what is the variable that made you become one, a subscriber that is, will help you do the actual attracting of those new subscribers. And that's the second focus. The third focus, let's say, making sure that that funnel is set up in the correct way. And then you become then you start to play the classic game of making sure that you have the right creatives, the process behind that, making sure that your setup, which is not that complicated anymore, is set up in the right way. And then after that, making sure that the machine, let's say, starts spinning and doing most of the heavy lifting for you. And then it's all about optimizing those creatives, the process behind it, and making sure that you make the right decisions with the data that comes in.
Imagine you've done the whole process, you've gone through it, things start to work, but after a year, the acquisition cost of new customers has risen until like unacceptable levels. Would you then start looking elsewhere, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, of like, or what would you look back at, like the data, and what steps would you take there?
Um, you mean the CPMs? So the cost?
The acquisition itself of like a new, let's call it a new subscriber, but in your case, you would say a new customer that would then need to convert to a subscription after his third or fourth purchase, right?
Yeah, because if there's an acquisition cost problem, then there's a business problem, and then you should look what's the reason for that business problem. Is our market saturated? Is are we not paying attention to our creatives anymore? Is our creative behind? Is our click-through rate lowering? Are we? Is there competition in the market that we are unaware of? So yeah, try to figure out what's the reason for the acquisition cost that is rising. If it's simply because your market is saturated, that you everyone who's on meta ads has figured out a way to yeah, come to you, what's your brand, what's your web shop, and eventually convert. Then I think it's all about yeah, you have two options, or you go you're happy with what you have, or you have three options. Let's say geographically you expand and you do the same tricks that you used in your native market, and you go beyond that. And the third one is you add a layer on top of what you're already doing to try to attract clients that are not meta first clients, the type of clients that are not used to converting on a non Shopify store every week or a month. Those type of clients, there are a lot of them who are not like that, might also like your product, and then there are other tactics needed. The tactic can also be a meta tactic, to be honest, because I think on a creative level you can also test with things that go beyond the traditional conversion ads. You could say um, you could work with in Belgium with a BV, with a famous person. You could work with another brand, do a collab, and then you might start to reach a market that you haven't reached before, and in that way you could attract a new audience. But if you're in that phase where meta becomes difficult to actually get rolling again, I think a new market might be the most logical thing to do.
But a new market means expensive acquisition cost, or not per se.
Depends. Depends. If your product has a product market fit and not a lot of competitors in that new market, you might start from scratch with your early on low acquisition costs. That might be the thing. also it might be you need to start creating trust, and that's an expensive one. Trust is also always a difficult one to nail, but also their PR, again, working with someone or working with influencers of that market. Those are the mini hacks that
Yeah.
make it could make it work.
If I hear you like today, and if I were to like describe you to my friends and colleagues, I would say like Dimitri is mostly busy with everything in terms of performance and the performance marketing side of it. Then at the same time, what I hear is that you actually need to look way beyond that to make sure that the performance marketing is working well. Um, has that kind of shifted also? Like, would you say in terms of is performance marketing now saying what the other marketeers should be doing just to make sure that everything is going as well as possible and the data is okay?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite an interesting question, because I think a performance marketing marketeer, let's say, shouldn't be siloed anymore. And it's not that that person should manage other people, but he or she should be very much aware of what's going on in the business and not look at the data that comes in meta ads. They should be involved in marketing meetings, strategic meetings, because they are the person looking at the data on a daily basis, and they know best what works and doesn't work on a product level, on an angle level, on a storytelling level. They know, they have a lot of data, and it's not something that you can easily put in a report. Let's say I would just on a monthly basis share what I've learned with my clients. It wouldn't be the same, because I am very much present during mostly every important strategic marketing meeting with my clients, and that means that I'm also physically there. And that's, I think that's a bit how that role is transforming from a I'm behind my computer making decisions and pushing buttons and making sure that things work, to a more I know things which you might not, and I'm going to share it with you so that we can together make the best possible have the best possible outcome. Um, and also, aside from what I just mentioned, I think on a creative level, working with creative teams. To be honest, I haven't found the exact name of what I'm doing currently for my clients. I call it an acquisition and retention consultancy. I don't know what the name is for what I do, but this what I just mentioned, I think, kind of describes it. I use what I know that I see in the data in meetings on a strategic level to make sure that we make together with the team make the right decisions. And I think that's a more valuable way of looking at it than sitting behind a computer and making decisions self and then report after a month about what you're looking at. And that is a bit linked to our introduction of this podcast, where I explained the reason why also I'm doing what I'm doing currently. Some of the D2C brands need that person in their office actually working with them on certain topics, rather than being at home or at an agency far away and reporting on a monthly basis.
Yeah, because it used to be that the platforms required way more attention also. Now
Yeah.
the platforms do most of the heavy lifting, like you said before. And maybe that's also kind of why it's now going way broader is you need to go broader as most of it is now handled in the platforms. It has
Yeah,
no
exactly.
use anymore to like push the buttons like you said. Um, really interesting. I think a question that's been on my mind and that I've seen a bit evolve throughout last year is I used to be like a big fan of all of the subscription brands and like how the business model itself is very attractive. But a few more recent brands are like way more into the community building and all of around memberships, maybe a bit more. And I find it interesting to ask you, like, what's your experience there, and how do you look at it? Should brands evolve to, like, should everybody have a community? Should everybody offer memberships? Or are some brands, yeah, should they just stick to what they know and just do what they do well? And yeah, again, a very broad question, but I'm interested in that movement. Like,
Yeah, my question that I would bounce back is how would you define a community? Because I think if you build up a brand and you don't have a community per se, but you have a brand which is also has an emotional layer, and you have fans of that brand, you could say that's a community as well, in a way. And I think what I'm that's what I just mentioned is the most difficult one to attain, that they form a community just by being a client. You have certain platforms, let's say, that make it more practical, like a Facebook group would be the most simplified version of that. That could work if it makes sense. If people want to talk about your brand on a platform, then I think definitely you should be the one to create that together with your fans, together with your clients, and let them discuss your product and your brand and in the platform that you created. I think is a very valuable thing to do, but again, a bit linked to should we have a subscription or not. If it makes sense, do it. If it doesn't make sense, I stay away from it, because it's not a hack to create a community. It's a very difficult thing to do, which I haven't seen often working, because it's so difficult. And I still lack a bit the clear definition of what people mean within community, because it's quite a vague word, sorry. And I think
I would say it's a shared identity. No, it's like
yeah,
you identify yourself as part of that community. That's really important already,
yeah,
and you kind of share the similar interests, and thus you identify yourself a bit with the brand and a bit with the members of that brand. And then in the
yeah,
end, indeed, it's pretty vague. But I think what from again from more of an outsider, what I've seen is mostly with the running brands also, and the whole explosion around running.
yeah,
They've had a very easy opportunity to develop their in-person communities, the running clubs, and all of that.
yeah, yeah. But in without the clubs, without the podcasts, without the all those more practical ways of building a community, if I wear a Supreme hat and you wear one as well, and we see each other on the street and we have the same one, we might do like, "Hey, John, you have the same hat as I do," and that's also for me. It's also a community. So that's what I meant in the beginning. I think if you develop uh, clients that become a fan, then you're actually also becoming building a community around your brand. But all the practical things that go with it are should definitely things that you should do. But for me, it's still things that take a lot of time and are difficult to do, especially at an early stage. I think you should pick the one that you believe in, that makes sense for your customer. It could be a Facebook group, it could be a podcast, it could be interviewing your clients to share small videos on Instagram. It could be a lot of different things. Just make sure that you pick the ones that are linked to your brand and that make sense, that do not feel forced. Because if you force me in a way to a community, that might harm more than do good.
You're just randomly added to a Facebook group, like, hey, thank you for joining the community. That's
Yeah, that's a major red flag.
yeah. Then maybe around the memberships, because that's still distinct a bit from the community part. You see a lot of, like, more, I would probably think, health startups. I've mostly seen, like, they want to get you within the membership, and they want to make sure that you not only take the pills but also share your data, do consultation calls, go to their yoga lessons. Their more, is that a that's kind of what I've seen, but is that the next step for a subscription, because subscription is more of a consumable. Yeah, you subscribe to things that you consume. Let's say
Hmm.
a membership is broader. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your question specifically?
How do you see brands evolve, and do you think everybody should go for such a broader model than just only subscriptions?
Um, I think that again, it's practically the same answer that I already gave. If the community that you've built, or the client base that you've built, they're interested in yoga lessons, then feel free to be the one that organizes those yoga lessons if it makes sense for your brand and your product to bring those people together. And if you're not selling beer and organizing yoga sessions at the same time, uh, things that make sense, I think, could be valuable for your customer, but don't let it consume that much time that you're not focused on the things that are within the core of your business. That will be the thing that, especially if you're a team of 10 people organizing yoga sessions, that will be a tricky one, and also difficult one to sustain on a monthly basis, let's say. So you can hear it. I think there are. We talked about in the beginning of pulling a lot of levers. I think there are a lot of them out there. You should pull a lot of them, but the ones that we're tackling currently, I think, are very time consuming, and might actually remove you from the core that is your business rather than reinforce it. But that can be different for each type of brand.
Yeah, indeed. That's probably also why I was interested in hearing it, because it kind of felt similar, as in you need to go out there, you need to organize events, and then I was like, yeah, maybe it makes more sense to like encapsulate it all into one big membership, and everybody can join the big family, and at the same time you pay the subscription, but you're less thinking about the subscription, but you're also kind of paying access to a certain experience and events and all of that.
Yeah, but the main difference there is if you position yourself in a way that you can make yourself scalable. Let's say, for example, being a guest on an interesting podcast which has a lot of followers in your core audience. That's something that is interesting because it's not a lot of effort and you're reaching a broad audience. If you have to organize a yoga session on a monthly basis with a small team, that's taking too much time of your small team and takes too much time away of the core of your business, having a good product and being able to sell that product in the best possible way. And so there should always be a balance. And it might be because of the examples that you give that I'm a bit saying that it be careful of those things. But there are definitely other ways to hack yourself in a community. A Facebook group, again, if it makes sense, could be one which has a better return on investment than creating yoga sessions. Again, nothing against yoga sessions, might make sense
If it makes
for
sense.
some of
Yeah.
the listeners, but I'm sure it doesn't for a lot of,
Yeah.
most of the other brands.
Yeah, I think to close that off, it's I've seen a brand actually offer a gift card. So it's a gift card. No, sorry, the page was about membership, and the membership itself is $125. And what you get in return for that $125 per year, you get a gift card in return for $50. You get a pair of socks in return. And so if you see each other on the street and you're wearing the same socks, then you're part of that community. You're a member, let's say. And I think the other thing was free shipping and then maybe 10% off or something. So they're trying to incentivize you, like, to pay pay your way to that community, I suppose. Then, and I like the example, but I have no clue if it actually works. Uh,
What my take on that is you're selling it to your most valuable customers. and those people would have been likely to already buy a lot from you anyways.
Yeah.
That's my take on those type of memberships cards. It's
Yeah.
your core audience, 80% that buys once a year, or 75% that buys once a year, will not care
They
about
would
that.
do it then. Yeah.
The 25% that matter most to you are likely to actually convert on something like that, but they are weren't they gonna buy a lot from you anyways because they're huge fans of your brand, and that's also the reason why they actually buy something like that. So again, and that's also something, is it worth the time that you invest in creating something compared to the outcome? Because I'm very much sure that those people are already your best cohort. Just nurture them in a way that you already were doing, because they already liked what you were doing, might have had the same outcome.
Yeah. All right. I think that's been really interesting. So thanks a lot. I think we've covered
A pleasure.
quite a bit, and I hope it was interesting to the listeners also. Dimitri, how can they reach you if they want to talk to you or ask you more questions?
They can. I think the most efficient way would be through LinkedIn. I think I easily respond through LinkedIn. So
Dimitri Devroe on LinkedIn.
Dimitri Devroe on LinkedIn. That's how you'll find me. And if you DM me there, I'll definitely respond.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.